Welcome to From Heartache to Healing and Hope with your host, Bernadette Winters Bell, LMSW. This podcast explores the many layers of life through the lens of loss and grief, often with special guests who share their perspectives on this universal yet unique process. These explorations can offer you, the listener, avenues to encourage you to have these conversations with yourself, your family, your community, your world.
Welcome. I'm Bernadette Winters Bell, your host here on the podcast From Heartache to Healing and Hope. And on this series, same storm, different boats. Wait till you hear this interview. Gabbie Lee Savell Stewart. She's from across the pond over in London, England. She's a young adult woman in the events arena and very technical knowledge about lighting and events. And she started designing prints, creatures of emotions that deal with such difficult emotions that at one time or another we've all felt. I really invite you to come and hear her and see her beautiful creations here on From Heartache to Healing and Hope. Bernadette Winters Bell, welcoming you aboard. Welcome. And I'm Bernadette Winters Bell, your host here for the podcast From Heartache to Healing and Hope. And in this series, same storm, different boats, I'd love to welcome my special guest from across the pond, as they say, Gabbie Lee Savell Stewart. Welcome, Gabbie.
Hi, Bernadette. Hi, thank you for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So I like to start with you introducing yourself to my audience, because you know you better than almost anyone.
Thank you. And so my name's Gabbie. I'm in London currently. I've started last year, at the tail end of last year, creating illustrations out of sort of a bit of a turbulent time in my life. And it's been really lovely to sort of have them there and give me something to do as well, because the pandemic has meant I've been furloughed for most of last year, so I haven't had anything to do. So that sort of helped. And yeah.
Wonderful. Well, you know, I learned that after World War I, which we were both not here for, people would ask one another, how was your war? Because of course, sources of communication were much different than today. And that's how people knew how to relate to what the others experienced. So I say to you, how has your pandemic been?
Ups and downs, I would say, ups and downs. You know, I think, versus in America, in the UK, we've had furlough, which has been incredible. You know, I've been still on about 80% of my pay, just not working, while that's also got its flip side in that you go from working all the time, and I work in events, so I work some crazy hours sometimes, to having hours and hours and not being able to fill them. So part of that has been good, you know, but part of it has also been bad and boring, especially in winter, you know, when it gets dark.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I'd say ups and downs.
What were you doing in events? That's so interesting.
Yeah, so I'm a production manager. So we sort of run events. So start to finish, talk to the client, see what they want. I'm more of a technical production manager as well. So I'd sort of spec all the kit you need. So the lights, sound, audio, AV, all that kind of all that equipment, and then go on site, put it in, make sure it's working and the client's happy, run the event and take it all out again.
So when I was saying to right before we started, what Beatrice, my beloved producer, does, I was preaching to the choir. I didn't need to tell you anything. This is also your game too. Good. So two people here know all about it. I appreciate it immensely. I just am not knowledgeable about it. And how long had you been doing that?
So it was this specific role was a fairly new job. So I started in September 2019. So I only got about 6 months in, but previous to that, I was a lighting designer for events as well. So I was specific just to lighting. And I did that for about 3 years before. So I only had about 6 months of my new role before, regrettably.
I don't think I've ever met anyone before this that was in that particular venue. Had that always been an interest of yours, or did you know someone in it, or?
No, not specifically. I went to university to do theatre studies because I really liked drama, I liked acting, I liked it all. Kind of knew I probably wouldn't be an actor though. It was never my dream. But there I discovered lighting, and I was like, oh, I really love this. This is so cool. All the things you can do with it, and I really like the technical aspect, and I really like the sort of rigging all the lights. I did a manager placement for a really good company when I was at university. Got out of university, became a warehouse manager at a production company in London. And then in that company, I said, oh, actually, I've been here a few years now. I think I've done quite well. Can I please move to this department and do lighting? And they said, yeah. So then I got to design lighting and then moved on to production management.
And what was the most surprising part of doing all the lighting that you so enjoyed?
Oh, that's a really good question. What was the surprising part? I just think sometimes things would just go wrong or they wouldn't look right, and you were like, I really thought this was gonna look better than it does. Oh, good. So sometimes that was the most surprising part, is you had this great idea and you put it all out and you went to the venue, and often we had really quick install times, an hour or so, and then you're like,
Right.
oh, well, just got to work with it now. I think
Yes.
The
Plan
saving grace
B,
in
plan
lighting.
C, plan D, when the first one doesn't work, right?
Exactly.
Right.
With lighting, the saving grace usually is clients don't necessarily know if an element is missing unless it's really obvious, because people don't always know what lighting's meant to look like. So that was a small saving grace. I mean, it's obviously you want to do your best, but sometimes.
Right, because those of us that have enjoyed the skills of someone as yourself, if we look at something, we say, okay, I like that. We might not even know why we like it. Now, I don't know that it's necessary. If you're doing your job, right.
Exactly.
Oh, wow, that's terrific. So before you said you had worked through what, halfway through last year?
Yeah, so I started September 2019, and we were told to work from home on my birthday on the 17th of March last year. And then after that, all our work from home ended up being us furloughed from April. So I was only there about 6 months before.
Wow. So when you're furloughed in that company or your country, you still get wages, it sounds like?
Yeah. So it's so you still get wages. So it was 80% of your wages, but they capped it at a certain amount. If you earned a certain amount, they would give you 80% on that amount, the government essentially. And then your work could choose to top it up for you if they wanted. So I was very lucky in that my work chose to top up our salary for the first few months to 100%.
So it sounds better than unemployment in this country. Wait a minute. Book me a flight to England.
Yeah, it was
good.
We're very lucky here, actually. We've been very lucky that not all companies have managed to survive the storm. Thankfully, mine have, because they've been able to move on to a lot of online stuff. But because we're still going just about, I think the company was in a good place when we started. So I've been very lucky that I still have my job in events when there haven't been events for almost a year.
Right. It's one of the areas that kind of the bottom fell out of, the arts, events, sure. All those kinds of things. Wow. That's amazing. So you found yourself at home and with a lot of time on your hands. And so tell us about what you chose to do with that time and why.
Yeah. So this, I guess it was a lot later in the year. It was about September, I think. So that I started sort of getting into the drawing side of things. So it's a sort of classic kind of, I was seeing someone for a bit and I had a really good feeling about this guy, and my sort of love life the last year hadn't exactly been amazing because there was a global pandemic on. Right. But so I'd been seeing this guy for a few weeks and I was like, oh, I feel like this is good, this is, got a really good feeling about this. And it was a very sudden ending of things from his end, very sudden, just one day fine, the next day no. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was pretty sad. And I just think also, I'm very much of the opinion, even if you don't feel like consciously like last year maybe affected you, I think deep down it has, it's affected everyone. So even if you're not sat there literally feeling anxiety or feeling overwhelmed, I think it's all there in an undercurrent. And I think that, coupled with a few other things in the year, I think I just had one thing that just sort of pushed me over the edge into just sadness, and it just, all the feelings just came.
And it does get overwhelming, and it can feel like a burden, like boulders on you. Especially, I know people feel it in their heart, and the cardiac and respiratory systems. In my field, in life loss and grief therapy, people often come in who aren't hunchbacks, right? Because everything is right here. And you're right. When you start to think of starting a new job and having it only a couple of months, and a pandemic, and the relationship snafus, and having to fill your time. And those are only the 4 things we've talked about in just a few minutes. So all the other things, worry about a grandparent or a parent during this time, or how the world or our countries are reacting to it. It could be any number of things,
Yeah, exactly. And I think also it's the uncertainty is that you just don't know. There's no point to get to, because we just don't know when it's going to be normal again. And so I think that also, my cat got very sick, which he's fine now. He's all healed, but it cost me a lot of money, the bugger. But so anyway, so I'd started drawing these animals. I think one of the first ones I did was the shrimp of sadness, because that was my overarching, was just, I was sad. I was so sad all of the time. And I drew some others, like the snake of regret, and I think the marsupial of madness, because I felt like I was going a little bit, I mean, I don't think it's crazy is not the right word, because it's not, I don't, but just a bit, all over the place. And
you know what, that's a real place that people often speak to me about when we're responding to trauma, profound losses. And I talk about this a lot. Our go-to coping skill. So just for argument's sake, we'll say your way is to keep busy. I'm just guessing here. And when our go-to coping skill gets up and leaves, it's another loss, almost like it's abandoned us. And so what we're used to doing to stay balanced, sane, if you will, now it feels like we're losing our mind. People say this too. Yes. Yeah. And so you kind of know you're not really, but maybe I am, right. Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. Because I think also part of the reason why this hit me so hard this time was also, usually I've got a life to be getting on with, I have to go to work, and I've usually have plans at the weekend, but this time it was just sitting with nothing to do. But yeah, so I started drawing, and then I showed them to a few of my friends, and they said, oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go. You can see some of them there. So I showed them to some of my friends, and these were just ones I'd drawn by hand, and they were like, oh yeah, these are really cool. I really like them. My friend was very supportive. She's like, it's great, because then you'll have all these things to look back on, and once you're through it, you can see the emotions you've got through and you sort of managed. And then another friend sort of said to me, well, why don't you do them digitally? Why don't you upload them and edit them and do it online? And I said, oh, I hadn't even thought, it hadn't occurred to me that I could. Oh yeah, the Lizard and Loneliness. This one took me a long time.
I love the names. I got to tell you, I love the names.
Thank you.
So you didn't start out as a business. You started out as a way to express your emotions. And I'm guessing that you were an artist prior. You didn't just learn to draw for this.
Well, no. So I drew on and off throughout the years, and I like being creative. And oh gosh, apologies. I like being creative, and I like building stuff and making things as well. I've made my own lights. The desk we're using right now, I built myself out of pallets. I like creating and doing stitching. So yeah, so this was the first time that I'd sort of drawn like this, or had a I guess a vision, or like something to stick to, a series,
Right. Wow. So after you were drawing them and showing them to people, then you went digital. Was that the process?
Yeah. So I've at first they were all just drawn by hand in a sketchbook. And now I do draw some by hand, and then but simply like an outline and scan them in, or others I will just draw, on I use free software called Inkscape. So yeah.
Where do the colors come from? I mean, is it colored pencils, pen, digital?
Sure, so that's digital. So the first ones, I'd drawn. It was all just line drawings.
Yes.
And I'd done them in colored pens. But now I do them. Yeah, this one was specific for one of my friends for her birthday. So they're not all sort of. I don't like to use the word like negative or positive, because I think
it's not. But it's no, because I love this one, the sloth of self-esteem. Yeah. And the first thing I thought of was how slowly so many of us come to having good self-esteem.
Yeah,
I think it's perfect.
It was specifically drawn for one of my friends for her birthday, because a sloth is her favorite animal. So. And I thought, I've got a few sort of positive ones as well, and I think I wanted to keep the sort of the animals that I've used for sort of the confusion or the regrets or whatever. I wanted to use ones that aren't necessarily nice, sort of almost goes along with the feeling, but then use bright colors as sort of juxtaposition to that, or an antithesis to sort of the negativity. But like, yeah, the ant of anxiety.
Oh, that's great. So the ant of anxiety, which doesn't conjure up happy feelings, but you're right, you did a beautiful bright color, and it becomes then acceptable to the eyes, then the heart, the spirit. And the other piece there is that when we're uncomfortable, as most people are, with anxiety, anger, sitting with it, this to me says you can do it. It's allowed, in other words,
Yeah.
Right. If an ant can do it, you can do it.
I liked having a sort of almost like a mascot to the emotions. I know for me it made it easier to, because the ant of anxiety was one of the first ones I did as well, and because I had an overwhelming feeling of anxiety, and
right.
which I don't usually experience, but I know my mum, at the time, she said to me, it's just because your world's been rocked a little bit and it's uncertainty, and that's why. And oh yeah, this one I did specifically for my sister. She hates spiders.
A tarantula of tiredness. I could see Hannah loving this, yes. And what's interesting about it, when you said about giving the animals and the different emotions, it makes it concrete for people. So because, when I say to people, we know that love exists, and sadness and grief and many other emotions, contempt, but can you show that to me? Like, this is a teacup, but you can show love, but you don't have a concrete example of it. And so because they're emotions, we start to get confused about what we're feeling. And is this real? And should I feel it for this long? And, shouldn't I just, what is it? Keep a stiff upper lip and move along. Yep. And so when you give the ant of anxiety and you give it concreteness, realness, I think that helps people say, yes, I do feel melancholy or angry or any of those kinds of things. I think it helps them to hold on to it.
Yeah. I mean, I know it helped me because I, throughout my life and growing up, I think maybe very British thing, had a hard time identifying feelings or being okay with feeling, difficult emotions. And having this, I could just be like, shrimp of sadness, or
right.
Anxiety with me today. That's what I've got, but it's okay.
That's terrific. So have you found that you've been selling these now. They're on Etsy, I see.
Mhm.
Have been people, I would imagine this would really hit people in a place that's a real need. Daddy long legs of desperation. Love it. Love
That one's creepy.
it.
Um, even I'm a bit like, ooh.
But so's desperation. So I think you got that one right.
No.
Good. So people can go to etsy.com. And what's the
Yes.
name of your site?
It's Creatures of Emotions.
All together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Creatures
Whenever I put a space in it, I couldn't find you.
there you go.
Right.
No,
So
I've
those
sold
are great.
some. Yeah, I've sold some, not too many though. I think after I sort of ended up back at work in sort of October, November, and ended up quite busy. So my working from home though, but so my pushing and everything sort of slowed down a touch, but I'm looking to get back into that now this year. And so yeah, I have sold some, and I've done I've done a few, I've had family request ones for me. So.
Absolutely. Okay. So after you did the digital prints, and what's it on? Is a certain kind of paper or?
Yeah, it's canvas. It specifies it's canvas, like card paper. It comes in a roll, and it's matte printed though, which I prefer.
Okay, I'm going to nod like I know what you're talking about, but I'm technologically ignorant, but it sounds perfect. And so after you saw them on this card paper and printed out, what did it say to you? How did that make you feel?
I was kind of proud that I'd because I haven't myself printed all of them yet. But I saw it and I was like, oh, I made that. That's pretty cool, and it's looking back now, because I'm in a much better place than I was then, like emotionally. I created that out of, it was probably around the darkest time of my year last year, really was a low point. And I thought, oh, I created that out, it's exactly like my friend said. She said to me, once you've got through that, you will have this to look back on. And it's almost hard to imagine having the shrimp of sadness or, with me every day, but it was for quite a long time. And now I'm not sad every day, obviously you have your moments, don't you? And yeah, so I think I was proud.
I love it. I was a podcast from last week. I was talking with someone where he brought forth the idea of owning what we're good at as well. I mean, we're really good at beating ourselves up when something isn't perfect or we haven't done it or we should have done it better. But owning what we do well, and not in a bragged way, but just like you said, I was proud I did this, right? Yeah. And knowing always for the rest of your life that if you ever should be, and let's say you won't be in that dark of a place, but in any sort of a not so well lit spot, you have the capacity to bring yourself out of it. I mean, you could bring those pictures back up and go, oh yeah, was it the mosquito of melancholy?
Yeah.
Okay, I've been with this guy, and you could say, I'm going to visit there. I'm not living there anymore, but I'm going to visit with that. That's the daddy long legs desperation. She might have been there too, but we don't know. So it says to me that when we know, I talk about with people that mosquito of melancholy. See, I remembered it. That we have a coping toolbox. So if you had a toolbox of coping skills, now it doesn't have to be wood, it could be. What would your box look like? Would it be, fabric or tapestry? What would your toolbox be made of? It's virtual, so make up anything you want.
Do I think because I have, I've got quite a few of my own tools because of, the work I do and everything else. And I need to get an actual toolbox, but I'd say a shoebox, because that is exactly what all my tools are in under my bed, is a shoebox that I've had since I was about 20.
Okay, so like I said, it could be anything you want. And now we're designing, because a toolbox that you know what to do now. and what it's like to sit with sadness or melancholy or anger or desperation or any of those emotions that you did feel or experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that tells us that we can do it again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
I think it's so hard, isn't it? Because it's not the first time I've experienced all of that. But when you're in it, you think this is it forever and ever. It's going to be it. This is all I'm ever going to feel. And you kind of know rationally that as time goes on, you will feel better. But at the time, it feels like.
Well, there are emotions, and, there's usually a disconnect, maybe through our whole lives, between the head and the heart. So you know what you're feeling. So even if the head had said, listen, heart, you're not going to feel like this forever. And the heart would be like, yes, but right now it's overwhelming. So shut up, because I don't believe you anyhow. Right. So even if logically we knew that, this feels like forever because it's so big. Right. So, oh, this is terrific. I absolutely love this. What has been the, beyond your friends, what has been the experience or the reaction from people, other family members, maybe coworkers?
Yeah, so I haven't shown my coworkers because they're not, I work in a team of all men and they're all very, because my work is technical. So it's mostly men. So I think they'd be a bit like, all right, yes, what? I don't think they'd understand.
You'd be taking them to a place they may not want to go. I get that.
Family have been really supportive, my parents obviously and my sister. My sister's great, so I send her, before I publish anything, I send it to her for critique. Because sometimes I think, I don't always agree with her, but when you're in it, sometimes I can see what I'm seeing, and to me it's what I'm seeing, and I send it to Hannah and she say to me, but it doesn't look right. I'm like, yeah, but it is. And she's like, it doesn't look right. And I go, oh, she might be right. She's the one I trust to give me,
of course,
proper feedback.
Sister or twin, of course. It would be like you critiquing her cake, some of those beauties that she makes, and say, it seems like one ingredient is off. No, it's perfect, she might say. Well, it might have sounded good in your head.
Exactly.
Right.
No, exactly.
But that's wonderful to get that feedback on something.
Yeah, she's the one I trust to, and I've said, said, you won't hurt my feelings. I'm asking for, I won't always agree with you. And if I don't, I don't, but so yeah, I think it's been good response. Some people, especially like on Instagram, again, I need to get back on there really and push it more, but people have, yes, I think enjoyed them, like sort of going, oh yeah, I like this, I think it's had a
really connect. Response. I'm seeing a book, maybe starting as a children's book, because to me, it's a simpler way to express things that people accept difficult ways. But this would be, I could see a book for each animal.
Yeah, well, I have been thinking very, very distant, vaguely about a book, because I think actually it's, it could be, I don't do your profession, I don't know, but I think it could be incredibly beneficial for young children to be able to have people go, it's okay to feel these feelings. You don't need to suppress them. You don't need to be happy all the time, and then also expressing them. If they're very young, they might not understand how to express them. And it might be easier to be like, oh, it's the ant today. And I think.
Well, interesting. You mentioned that. So something I have done is I've worked with someone that did what you call a cocktail book here, mostly pictures and some writings, and it was about her emotions over the death of her father. But she sent it to me to edit because I know I've worked in that field for so long. So write the book, send me pages. We'll go back and forth and we can get something out there, because you got all the illustrations done,
A lot of them. I've got more to come.
Excellent. Oh, good. Now I've just given you and I, that have very little time left, more to do. Terrific, though. I love it. I just love it. Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me here today. I know my audience is just going to love hearing from someone across the pond, and also that has a different perspective than anyone that I've spoken to heretofore. about their experience during the pandemic. So please repeat your name and all the contact information, because I want to make sure people can get on that site and maybe overwhelm you with orders.
That'd be great. Yeah, so my name is Gabbie Lee Savell Stewart. My Instagram is at creatures of, with 3 underscores afterwards, and my Etsy is creatures of emotions, all one word. Yeah, and that's where you can order them, and then I post everything on Instagram, and if anyone wants commission, I can do that as well. Yeah.
Commission as well. I just love it. And what are the size of the prints that people get?
You can get various. I think it's about 8 inches by 8 inches is smaller, or 8 by 6, depending on the layout of the print, and then it can go all the way up to 25 inches. There's different sizes, and obviously the cost goes up, and but yeah, that you can choose on it.
What this would be great in like preschool and nursery schools. Yeah, like in the hallway as they walk. Okay, I'm gonna be selling to everybody for you. Okay. Sorry, my mind like never stops.
No, I love it. It's perfect.
So I want to thank you so very much for being a very special guest here on the podcast, From Heartache to Healing. And before we get, the end of it is, and to hope. So tell me, what gives you hope for the future?
I mean, honestly, right now, probably the vaccine, because England has started getting it. But personally, I think hope it would be the vaccine. I actually am now in another relationship that is going incredibly well and has been lasting a lot longer. So that's given me a lot of hope. And yeah, the vaccine and getting back. I want to get back and do events. That's what I want to do.
Okay, well, we'll keep all those good thoughts. As my special guest on this series, same storm, different boats. Thank you so much for joining us here today. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. Thank you.